Welcome to the Retro 21 Studios podcast. I'm your host, M Squared. This is episode 6. I'm joined with Nate Lindseth from the Portland Christian Center.
Yes.
How you doing, Nate?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure.
The focus of the podcast has been around technology, AI.
Yep.
And in our earlier episodes, I talked about AI in the context of some of the concerns that were raised. There's been calls for stronger regulatory context. And then I received the email, and it was a sermon was conducted via ChatGPT. It was generated by the tool, and then they used the voice synthesis, and the AI actually conducted the sermon. It just seemed like the whole point of church and spirituality is the individual, the human experience. Yeah, what's your take?
What's my take? First of all, thanks again for having me. Thanks for sending that to me. It's been a great topic of conversation. I've actually been pitching it around to different people and pastors and hearing their opinion and thoughts on it. I think we all live in the tension of, man, technology is great on the one hand, and then we're constantly trying to figure out how far is too far, what is the balance for all of us. I'm thankful for so many things that technology brought me. I don't have to hand wash my dishes. I don't have to do my clothes that way. All of that is just fantastic, right? But then you start going to this next levels with AI and technology. I think the one thing that I would just really bring up, first of all, is what we believe as Christians is that we're all going to end up somewhere forever, right? Like you're either going to be with Jesus forever in heaven, or what the Bible teaches that you're going to be in hell eternity with Satan. And one of the things the Bible teaches us is that there's always an enemy and Satan trying to steal, kill, and destroy. That versus John 10:10. The enemy's trying to always throw things off. And I think one of the things you find throughout the world is something, we've seen it forever, it's something called counterfeits. Something that would replace the authentic expression and encounter with God. And so it's not that these things are like necessarily inherently bad, like a cell phone isn't bad, it's just a tool. But one of the things that can happen is if it replaces God's sacred space in our lives, that's when we get in trouble. That's when we start going off base. And so AI in and of itself, it's somebody just creating something that can respond and react. And I'm thankful for autocorrect and auto spell check and all those types of things. But I think we have to be careful whenever we start looking for other things to replace what God's put in place. I think that's when we get in real danger. And so when it comes to a sermon, I just think there's just nothing that replaces a person expressing what they've heard from God and then expressing it out through the Word of God so that people can encounter God. And I just think there's just something that will never replace that. As much as great this platform is, Michael, I'm still talking to you.
That's right. That's right.
So that's where I take it. What's your take on it? How does it hit you?
So again, you're taking out the human experience and just growing up. That was the key with respect to church. Folks look at the pastor as a step closer. And I think that's in any religion. There's a leader that either through that individual gaining knowledge, right, through the text, through the scripture, that's a step closer. And so people want that level of discernment from that individual and their spirituality. And to bring in a synthetic structure, it just struck me as odd.
Absolutely. I don't know if you saw one of the Instagram memes and all those things, and they had someone, a thread came up on it, and it showed the church in Belgium. And one of the comments was that the person reporting was laughing that it lacked heart and soul. I was like, oh, that's funny. So I just think it's an interesting thing to talk about because I think in the church world, people get upset with something called video venues. It's a real pastor speaking, but I'm watching him on a screen. Does that replace being at church? That's some of the stuff we talk about. I think ultimately, when it comes down to it, what is my purpose as a Christian and my purpose as a pastor? Always to help people find Jesus. Because when you meet Jesus, he changes your life and then he gives you a new path. And part of that path is to glorify him with everything within you, but it's also to connect you with other Christians. We have to be careful. We don't try to displace or replace the role of human connection in our lives.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that networking with family, with community, and with church. So technology can assist in that regard. You talked about that fine line.
Oh, yeah. And I know for me, I'm constantly working on that. This podcast that you're making right now is fantastic. And we're talking about as a church because you can reach so many more people.
That's right.
Starting a podcast, how can we do that? But I think it's funny you brought up COVID. My wife and I were just talking about that. There were so many great things that were like, I don't know, just not planned about COVID in the sense that you were with your family a lot.
Right.
You were stuck together and you found different things that were happening, all these different repercussions. But then there's the negative ones of when you go back to public school, kids are behind.
That's right.
They've had all this screen time. And so people aren't able to relate as well. And I've talked to countless teachers that their kids are so far behind, they're still catching up, there's still social issues and parents and things like that. And so I just think there's always positive negatives with things that happen, but we have to keep pushing back what is our real purpose. And I just believe God wants us to connect, have relationships.
That's
and
right.
boy, it's so sad when you start looking at, I'll be guilty of it myself. I'll be at the park with my kids. The next thing I'm scrolling on my phone. Right. What is wrong with me? Or I see my wife and I will go on a date and we see these couples on their phones. And there's just something there. I think it's fascinating that Steve Jobs wouldn't let his kids have Facebook accounts or iPods and things. He was very strong about the guy who's creating all this is keeping his kids away from it. And I'm sure as a dad, I'm sure you're feeling some of that tension as well.
Oh, absolutely. At this stage, based on the age of my kids, my daughter's about to graduate high school.
Wow.
And they're on devices. And so we've went years playing the device game. Okay, limit screen time. Okay, I can't control screen time while they're at school or while they're with friends. And so there's this crazy tension over the years. And now I'd sit back and watch. And you mentioned the kids are at the park or doing something. You find yourself on your device.
Yeah.
And so I spend more time trying to figure out if I'm spending too much time because I'm setting the example and setting the pace.
Yes. So true. It's so true. You feel embarrassed sometimes. You're like, what screen time? Why am I using this? What is the point? And man, if you're missing connection, you're missing it. And so I think we're really trying to figure out how to make that happen. Do you allow your boy, that's where we kind of got connected. Does he have a phone? Is he allowed? What are some of your guys' stance on that? How's that going?
Yeah, so he's probably had a phone for at least a year. He actually got an upgrade because he destroyed his other one. And everything, it worked out in his best interest. So he has a phone, and one of the concerns was just safety. So now there's a lot of stuff happening in the world, at school, at events where we're not there, and he's a little bit older and out. Yeah. And I just wanted him to have that connectivity, that ability to pick up that phone and dial it if there's an emergency, if he just wants to. Yeah. And it's not just the place is on fire. It could be a situation with his peers where he just doesn't feel comfortable. So I wanted him to have that level of connection. And there's a cost associated with it, of course.
Oh, yeah.
So I felt that the benefit was greater than the cost, but that's yet to be seen.
I know. Did you, with your daughter, did you do the same age with phones with her?
Yeah, and the older daughter, she probably beat us down a little bit. So, yeah, I tried to be super strict or whatever, but it was a real battle.
You were stronger.
So, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, she's definitely connected to her devices. How about yourself and your kids?
Oh, yeah. My wife and I are very on it. So this last Christmas, we got him a phone, but it doesn't work. We only got it so he could listen. He wanted those Beats headphones, the big red ones that all the kids have. We have a Spotify account that we can monitor. And we really wanted him to be able to use that. And as we talked about more, we just weren't comfortable with the phones yet. We're more on the protective side, no social media, those types of things. And we want to keep his cell phone off him and want him connected. It's like you said, if I'm setting the pace, I can't be on my phone all the time.
That's right.
And so it's a real battle for me personally. So with him, I've just noticed I'm really grateful that we're that way. Part of it I see is friends at school struggling to make connections, people because they don't know socially how to do that. And he
That's right.
does a great job connecting, looks people in the eye. Adults are always commenting. He asks them, Tess will say, how are you doing? Flips the script on him. And he's 11. And I think those are social skills. I just think you can't replace those. Right. And you need to be working on them. And it just all goes back to, I think God designed us for connection. And we need to be working on connecting. Now, obviously, with phones, we are way more connected than we ever were in the
Than we
past,
ever were.
but we're also more depressed and lonely than ever in history. And so the data it's a real conundrum that I think all of us have to be careful on and watch, that we're making sure that we're using these amazing tools for good and for blessing and not for harm or hurting. Because to be honest, AI, it's not going anywhere. It's only going to get more intelligent. And so I think just us being more aware, and I'm so glad you're having this conversation. I think we need to be having this conversation more and more, because even listening to you talk, I'm learning, how is Michael handling this? Man, my wife and I can talk more about different things. And it's just fun to hear everybody's perspective is so unique and different. So it's fun.
You're right. AI isn't going anywhere. And one of the things that I promoted in the earlier episodes, right, we shared some of the concerns. And the takeaway was, knowledge is power, and learn more about this technology, learn how it's being incorporated into our everyday lives. And then if there are the bad things, you're more capable of detecting where it's going in a bad direction. Maybe I should steer this direction or another. And maybe on a more community level, if you start talking about surveillance, right, of military applications, law enforcement applications, and there's some good applications there without a doubt. There's always a balance. And so we have to be sufficiently in tune to call out when it exceeds the boundaries.
I agree 100%. And it's just not easy to do that.
It's not easy.
You have to be intentional and be asking the question constantly. And I think it's funny as you were talking about the military applications and things, and I'm curious your opinion, like sometimes I think it's funny how people may not take it serious because they've watched too many Terminator movies.
That's right.
Oh, I've seen that movie before. Of course, that would never happen. And I'm not saying it would happen or not. I'm not sure if Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to show up in this podcast here in a moment or not. But I think there's a level of healthy conversation that needs to be around it. And man, asking the questions, I think, what is our purpose in life? What are we really here for? And making sure we're doing what, as a believer, what God's called us to do, and doing that as best we can.
Wow.
Yeah.
How pervasive is the conversation amongst your congregation, amongst your peers? Are folks starting to talk a little bit more about this?
A lot. It's funny you say that. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of them is a church pastor in LA. His name's Chad Veach, and he has something called the Leadership Lean In podcast. And just the last one, he was talking about his phone, his scrolling habits, and him and his people were talking about it. And I don't know what it's called. It's basically a box that you and your wife or your family, you put your cell phone in this box. Yeah. And it's a competition, and it like tracks how long you're in the box. And awesome. So the idea is that it's making it a game. And I think it's reversing the dopamine levels in your brain to make you excited for winning by not having your phone with you as much, and then getting on the other side. So he bought this, and so him and his wife are doing this whole thing. My screen time's down 12% this week. But it's a big deal, I think, because as a pastor, we're constantly dealing with people that are struggling with relationships just across the board, whether it's your marriage, kids, peers, work relationships, friendships. It's amazing how it is individualized and unique. The theme and the thread over and over is we are built and designed for healthy relationships, and people are just struggling to have those.
That's right.
And they look at their lives and they're like, I don't have good connections. I'm not building a healthy connection. And they don't understand, and they don't know how to create healthy one-on-one connection. They don't know how to have healthy boundaries. They don't know how far is too far. And so as pastors, we're really working on relational dynamics. How can we have healthy relationships? How can we build that? Because a lot of times, Facebook, social media, AI now, one of the questions we have to ask is, why are we so passionate about creating something to fill that void of emptiness in our lives? Because it hurts. We're alone. And this, relationships can hurt.
That's
People
right.
hurt us, whether they mean to or not. She said, he said, they said, and now I'm hurt. And that's where you see, like, just for one example, in marriages, people struggle because they're not being close with their spouse. So they go somewhere else to find it.
That's right.
And or just friendships in general, loneliness, they go somewhere else and they can't stay and connect. And learning how to stay and build longevity, it seems like it's getting more and more rare. And so that's the discussion we're having. I would be curious, does that seem rare to you?
Yeah, very much. Last night, I do my scan as far as what's new in AI, and you could choose almost any topic. And so I was looking at, so Chat GPT, that's what everyone, they use that term ubiquitously now. Yeah. There's these other tools. So I come across this tool, and it may have been around for a while, but there's a subscriber base, so it really gets to know you, right? So it becomes your companion where you could actually have rich conversation, and it will allegedly match with your personality. And then for a small fee, it could actually become your companion where you could really take the conversation up a level. It's this catch-22. So are these tools being designed to fulfill a need, right? That people are becoming more disconnected, or are the tools driving towards it?
I think, just to be honest, as I hear you talking, I can see some, we'll just put it, I'm sorry, just our context as Christians, people get scared. They're like, oh no. And I look at it completely different. I think as a church and as the body of Christ, as people who love God, what a great opportunity. Because it just shows that, to me, it just shows people are longing for connection. They're longing for relationship. They want something. And what we have found more and more in our church, we've changed some of the style up a little bit just to try and create more space for processing, connecting. We call it worship and singing, where there's just time of reflection and asking the Lord to speak to you. Those things are just so powerful and enriching because our lives are so busy. We're in such a hurry and we're trying to do all these things. And some of it, to live in Portland, you have to make a decent amount of money to have a house. You got to hustle. Some people work 2-3 jobs and they're stressed. They're pushing. They want to make all these, and they got kids, they got spouses. And so what ends up happening is you do all these things and there's just no downtime, no connect time, no relationship time. So sometimes church, I've just seen people come and they just breathe. Just like, I just think that's so powerful. I think that's exactly what, and then you start building healthy relationships and connecting. And there are people that drive to our church. I'm not joking. They'll drive 55 minutes to an hour on a Sunday morning because they have relationship here.
That's powerful.
They're so connected and they love the church. They love the people and they can't get it anywhere else. And I think we need, as people, to really examine the why behind we're driving towards this. It's one thing to play games and have fun, right? But it's another thing to say, man, in my life, how are my relationships? And what can I do to build that? And I don't think AI is the answer, but I think there's obviously a market. Do you know anything about the market level and how they're making money and how well they're doing?
The big driver now is around routine task. So if you look at it from, I don't know, if you go back to the Industrial Revolution, right? You're bringing in automation, and that changed the game with respect to efficiency and productivity. So in many circles, it's being looked at in the same way. So there's routine, mundane task. And unfortunately, beauty is in the eye of the beholder in this particular case. What one may see as a routine, mundane task may be someone's way of making a living. And so historically, it's been about, at least in business class, it was people will retool. They'll figure out the change that's happening. They'll adjust and move to the next level.
Interesting. Yeah.
So there is huge monetization around AI right now, and that's where the big drive is. And the congressional hearings a little bit earlier in some of the conversation was around, where are the endpoints? Are there adequate guardrails around this? So there's big money right now, and there's really no end in sight. And therein lies some of the concerns, because there could be displacement. It would be nice to have some transparency, some metrics to show this level of progression. Okay, these people are sufficiently transitioning into another area in life where they're going to have the same quality of life, right? Same income levels, that sort of thing, while these supposed improvements via technology, via AI take hold. Yeah. So I think there's a slight disconnect right now, and therein lies some of the alarm bells.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, you point out there's AI that I'm using that I don't even think of it as AI.
That's right. Your hospital, you go in for diagnostic, there's a possibility that hospital has adopted AI technology. And in this particular case, there may be some benefit. Like you come in with something weird, they take a picture or whatever and go back. Historically, this may have taken a few doctors scanning through the medical books and going online. And that could be a matter of hours. They may tell you to go home and come back. And now, just in a matter of minutes, here's a treatment regimen. So it's hard. You can't toss the baby out with the bathwater. There's a fine line. It's a dynamic exercise.
It is. But I think you're like these conversations keep having absolutely critical. What would you say is like something you're excited about AI?
So I love the knowledge. I've been in the tech field since I was in grade school. I took my first COBOL course when I was in high school. I think I was a high school senior. And so, yeah, I've always appreciated and tried to understand the technology. But at the same time, I understand that there's limitations. And so I love what's out there. I love the innovation.
Oh,
you could look at any other endeavor as well, right? There's always bad actors. Jeffrey Hinton, the guy from Google, he talks about bad actors. Any domain, banking, finance, healthcare, there's bad actors. So we have to understand who they are, what they're up to. That's one of the drivers for the podcast, is to push that knowledge out.
Love it.
In this particular case, AI is hot. I like to look at it holistically.
Man, I tend to be a little bit that way. I love technology. There's that movie. I love technology. Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, Napoleon Dynamite. That's a favorite.
Man. I just started thinking I'm going to start singing that song like he did. As a pastor, I just think we have to keep looking at ways to leverage the technology to get the good news of Jesus out. Pretty much my thought with it is...
That's your mission.
Yeah, that's my mission. And we're trying to figure out... So like, for example, one of the things you'll see if you watch our church online is the screen behind me is low. And the reason is because it creates a better experience online. In our church, you'll see these 3 screens and one of them is low and the other 2 are higher. And if you don't know it's online, the reason why, you might think, I wonder why they left it like that, because it should be high like the other ones. And so we're actually building in like reasons why we're doing things in our church is because we want to get the gospel out. Because what's amazing to me is our number one driver of attendance for new guests, new visitors, is our online experience.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They say people will watch the data. Last stat I saw is that someone will watch your service 7 to 8 times before they actually attend it. We've just taken that very seriously as we try to make sure we're doing a good job. We have people that monitor like chat and things like that. So if someone watches and takes a question and things, we can answer it, follow up. How can we serve you? How can we help you? Those are all things that we are doing to try to leverage what's out there. And I don't know how artificial intelligence will help us with that, other than it's already probably going in the background that I don't see.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You just mentioned, right, someone's monitoring the chat, and you described some analytics that you're getting from your online presence. So
isn't that crazy?
That's in line with other uses, right? With corporate uses of the tools.
It's amazing when COVID hit, we were talking about that. So many churches, because they couldn't meet, they all of a sudden had an online campus on YouTube. But now that we're back able to go in person, some people have thrown out the whole online studio.
That's interesting.
And then I think that's a mistake. I think we should try and do both. We want to do in person and online, but it's just interesting. And then some have actually just gone all online. They don't actually meet in person.
Okay.
And so there's just and I think every church and pastor has their reasons. They understand, they're trying to do their best with what God's given them. But I know for our church, we want to do our best in both spheres. But there's a few churches I know that are doing like the metaverse, like you said. They have a church on the metaverse.
Oh, wow. Okay. So taking advantage of that, we were talking about the impersonality. And so, wow.
They do. Isn't that crazy?
Embracing the tech. That's awesome.
Yeah. So they've had people said they became a Christian online, said they got baptized online, all through the metaverse.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. Nate, I certainly appreciate you joining today. And it'd be great to bring you back on. There's so much ground to cover here.
I would be completely honored, man. Anytime you let me know. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
I really appreciate it because you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. And if folks want to reach out to you or your church, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So our church is pcctoday.com. and you can go on there and find us. If you want to find me on social, it's just Nate Lindseth. Instagram is my handle, or you can find me Nate Lindseth Facebook, and love to connect with you any way that you want.
Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Hey, you too.